Welcome to Live Into Your Best Life, a show where people learn how to go from where they are to where they'd like to be in any area of life. If you're looking for a new job, wanting to improve your relationships, or even reclaim your health, Polly Skaya will share with you a simple formula that can take you on a journey to begin to live into your best life in all areas of life. Now sit back and begin your journey.
Hi there, and welcome to Live Into Your Best Life. I'm Polly Skaya, your show's host, and today I'm here with Christine Schwartz. Now, I met Christine at a networking event just a couple of months ago by the time you listen to this, and I was so excited to connect with her. She is this just highly intuitive, very warm and welcoming person who really wants to get to know about the people around her. And the message that she shared that night was very compelling because it's about helping people dig in and see where they want to go and figure out what's your brand, your personal brand going to be. Now, as Christine and I were talking, we were discussing we've both had some transitions in the past year, and we're moving into some new directions. And so rather than read a bio or go to her website and bring all that stuff up, I'm going to put what she wants as her contact information in the show notes. And I'm just going to welcome her to the show and let her tell you her story. So welcome, Christine.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here and I'm excited to share. It's wonderful.
Nice. So tell us, give us the lowdown on your journey.
Yeah, of course. To start, I'll introduce myself. Christine Schwartz. I am in Duluth, Minnesota. For those of you that don't know, that's on the big lake of Lake Superior, where it is very cold in the winter, but I love it here. I love the landscape. I love being a little further away, but still accessible to the Twin Cities. I have a husband, a 2-year-old daughter, and a 22-year-old stepdaughter, and I'm a business owner. So I run Reinvent Your Hustle as well as Refined Ritual. And I've been doing that for the last 5.5 years. My previous experience, I call myself a corporate dropout. And so I worked in the corporate setting for a long time. And as a woman working your way up the corporate ladder, as many of you probably can relate, sometimes we have to work a little bit harder. Sometimes it requires a little extra elbow grease. And it's almost as though we have to prove ourselves. We have something to prove because it is harder to get a seat at the table once in a while. Working my way up the ladder, I would take positions in the corporate setting. And when I wasn't promoted, I created opportunities for myself. So I went back to school. I got my master's, my MBA, as well as my MAM, and then took another position when I graduated because, again, there was an opportunity to move up. And so I had to reinvent myself. And I went back to the previous company I had worked for. I was currently working at the sister brand, and I worked as their operations manager for marketing and loyalty and credit. So we managed over 1 million loyalty members and the credit card program as well. Did a full-blown rebrand, and in 2019, I was laid off. Now, for anyone that can relate, sometimes a layoff can feel as though your identity is fully being stripped from you, especially when your work is almost everything. Family is very important. I'll be very clear about that. However, it was a time of reflection, and within a week, I started my own business. So I started Reinvent Your Hustle, and that's been an evolution as well. And what I realized at that time, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Your rejection is your redirection. And for me, it was the opportunity to not only go inward and understand myself more, because I'll tell you, I've learned more about myself in the last 5.5 years than I ever have in my entire life as an entrepreneur. However, that is an evolution. Nothing is linear. And so as you're mentioning, Polly, like it is a constant shifting of figuring out what is my life path, what is my soul purpose, what am I here to do, what am I here to create, who am I here to impact. And after running retreats all over the world and really impacting women in a really wonderful way through masterminds and events and speaking, I've really come to this point where I just thought to myself, there's got to be a different way. There's something that I'm missing. So that is when we met last week or 2 weeks ago. I've
Yep.
really been in this beautiful shift, and up until this point, it has been an amazing journey, and I'm so grateful for all the support along the way. And it's time for a shift. It's time for a pivot. So
Nice. And okay, so when you were laid off, I love that your rejection is your redirection. I
mhm.
think that is just fantastic. And there's so many people. Just last week, I had a bunch of friends that got let go from a major corporation, and there's more and more folks that are losing jobs for a variety of reasons, right? And I think that is a really important message is that this is an opportunity. It's like when a door closes, a window opens type of mindset.
Absolutely.
And how did you, so you went from I'm laid off to a few days later, I'm starting a business. How did you know how to go in that direction?
That's a great question. I was approached a few weeks prior to that. My boss had said, "Would you want to consult for Urban Outfitters?" At the time, we were doing product lifecycle management, which I don't need to bog this down, but basically, there was a company that they were working with inside of that company, and they were looking for consultants. And I said, "Yeah, as long as it's not a conflict of interest." That fell through, but what it did was it broadened my eyes to I can do this. I can work for myself. And all too often, when you work for an employer, especially when you work so very hard, and I knew all the executives, I did strategic planning, I had helped with roles and responsibilities. I was friends with some of these people. And when you get laid off, that feels as though it is a personal attack on yourself. And I just said, you know what? I am just a number. And I refuse to work for the man. If
Mhm.
I'm going to bet on anyone, I'm going to bet on myself. And I know I can do this. And granted, I had marketing experience. So I know some of the technical sides of building a website. And I thought, I'm going to blog and make so much money blogging. Yeah. So you learn, right? You learn through going through the motions. Experience is something that cannot be rushed. However, in going through that process, it really at the same time was a spiritual awakening. And the beautiful part about that is I started to see the signs. I started to see the writing on the wall. And it was from becoming more self aware, asking the questions, not being so attached to the outcome. And ultimately, that redirection point that I think a lot of us either you're in it right now or you felt that in the past. Sometimes it can feel like a personal attack, but it's what you do with it. And one of the lessons is really if you can impact one person with what you're doing, especially as I was transitioning into this new world of entrepreneurship, if I can come from a place of service and really impact people in a way that is transformational and can change their life, if there's one person,
Mhm.
then it was worth it. And when you come from the heart and you work from a place of service, you're going to be so much more successful. And so it's yeah, we all have a pity party, right? We all most likely, if you've been laid off, you're like, why me? Why did this happen? But you have to find the silver lining. And that is happening for a reason. There's a greater reason. You are here for a reason. You're in this perfect point in place and time because you're meant to create an impact doing something else.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you have to acknowledge that grieving process that comes with change without
Mhm.
getting stuck in it.
Mhm.
And now how can I use this change to propel me to the next chapter or the next, I don't know, volume of your book, whatever. Yeah,
Absolutely.
very cool. Okay, so now where are you pivoting to? What's next?
Yeah, that's the question. I haven't made it fully public, so by the time this airs, maybe it'll be out. Let me give you another little insight to really following the signs. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about your direction and what's next for you, I would absolutely recommend start to look at where there's resistance.
Mm.
Where are things not fitting? Where's the square peg round hole moment? I was, for example, running some events. So I do a lot of retreats and I do these internationally and I create these amazing experiences for these women. And what ends up happening is, yeah, we're in a beautiful house that's bougie and beautiful. And we have a chef and we have a photographer. And so, of course, it feels like a transformational experience. And I thought to myself, how do I create that here locally?
Mhm.
And I ended up, because I have friends in the construction and home sphere down in the Twin Cities, I reached out and I decided instead of doing it in Airbnb, why wouldn't I just go to these custom homes? So I ended up working with a bunch of custom home builders and they sponsored these events. And we did these beautiful events for women inside of custom homes. All of that was great. The women had beautiful experiences. And what I realized was like, there are women that are in business that might not be entrepreneurs that truly need this type of support. They want to feel worthy. They want to be part of these spaces. They want to have these rich, dynamic conversations with other women and build these connections. And I was only working with entrepreneurs at the time. So it was an aha moment for me. So there a light bulb went off.
Mhm.
And at the same time, I kept hitting walls, putting these events in place, from sponsors dropping out to really just feeling like it wasn't the right direction. But I loved the home industry. And in identifying what was next for me, it was really looking at, okay, what are the things that I love? What's lighting me up? What's bringing me joy? How do I take my expertise from previously and what I was doing, and how do I bring them together? So, if you know me, if you look me up, you're going to see I am spiritual. I'm a little woo. And for all my soulpreneurs out there, hello, welcome to the table. But I went to my angel healer, and what she said is really my guides were coming through. My angels had said, what about real estate? And I thought to myself, no, real estate? But was that me, my ego talking? Like, what a big shift. Am I going to give all this up for that? Is that what I really want to do? So I sat on it. I sat in my feminine, my being, instead of doing and taking action right away. I thought, okay, sit in this, meditate on it, think about it. And it came through that I was just excited about it. I'm like, okay, jump into the course, see if you like it. Wasn't that big of an investment, but I'm like, just take the time. So I did. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. So what I ended up doing was I took my exams already. I passed my exams and now I'm going full force into real estate. I'm taking my business and I'm doing an 80-20 model where 20% of my time will be spent on my business, where 80% of my time will be put into the real estate market, residential. And I launched a podcast, which I'm super excited about. So I launched a podcast and I decided, because I've been running a mastermind, and this is another grieving process, because when you have a revenue stream or when you're doing something for a really long time and you have a financial attachment to it, it is scary as hell to walk away from it.
Yes.
Let's just say I had to grieve that one too. And I decided that it was time to close my mastermind. Now, at the same time, I had all of this stuff that I had created over the last 5.5 years, so many tools, so many resources. And I had seen these women that really craved community. And I thought, what if I just did a membership? Little audio notes, little pieces of inspiration, and built a community of women that could come together. So I'm in this really transitional state of where I'm transitioning my full blown business. I never thought this would ever happen. I'm keeping my podcast. But I launched a membership literally last week. I just started bringing people into this circle. And I'll be very honest, I don't know where any of it's going to go. I know that I love the podcast. I know that I love helping women transform and connect with one another. And I'm really excited for this next adventure in real estate, because you get to create a customer experience transformational, one of the biggest decisions I'll ever make. And I get to be part of that, but with something that's a little bit more tangible. Obviously, a house is an asset. It's just more tangible than when we look at actually as a business coach, right? Building your business. So,
Very
whew, there you
cool.
go.
Congratulations. That's exciting. I love it.
Thank
And
you.
it was really fun as you were sharing the story, because sometimes you would light up and your voice would get this real excitement. And then you could also tell when you were going through sharing the parts where you were having to let go, or where it was a little bit more difficult, right? And I love that you're so vulnerable and transparent with people. And just because that's what we go through, that's reality. And I also love that you're following the breadcrumbs. That's one of the things that I work with folks on, is here's where you are, here's where you want to be. What are
Mhm.
the items that get us from here to there? And part of what I encourage people to do is follow the breadcrumbs, follow the signs, pay attention. And so exactly what you're sharing. And I'm so proud of you for doing that. Very cool.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate that. It's not for the faint of heart owning a business and making big decisions. And I think there's this other side, like you talked about. I went and spoke, and that's how we met. And it's identifying, how does this old version of me come together with this new version of me? And I think sometimes we think it has to be all or nothing, and that's really not the case. You get to do all of it, right? So if somebody comes to me and they're like, Christine, I need your support for this, that, or the other. Sure. I had said to my clients that I currently have, I'm like, yeah, we can do one on one coaching. We can still meet as a group. I'm just not having an official mastermind anymore. So we don't have to just rip off the band aid and say, no, I'm not doing any of this anymore. It's finding that balance. And also in that transition, making sure that you are financially taking care of yourself along the way, right? Because it can be easy to just jump 2 feet in and then not think through the repercussions of your actions. At least for someone like me, when I get really excited, I want to run and I want to jump, and it's, whoa, take a pause, have a conversation. These are big conversations that I had to say, tap on my husband's shoulder and be like, we have to talk. We have to talk through this stuff. And where do you want me to focus? And how do you feel about this transition? And having that clear path of communication amongst one another so that we're on the same page and we can do this together.
Yeah, that's really important. Especially, it doesn't matter if you're a consultant or an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, or what. Real estate is an entrepreneurial business, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You have an office, but you are your boss. You are the person who's going to make it or break, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely. And it's about building your own brand too, right? Your own
exactly.
reputation. So I 100% think that it works really well. And I can still hold events and run
Mhm.
masterminds and retreats if I really want to. But I also believe that you have to focus, right? And when you're starting something new, you have to narrow in and make sure that you're giving it the time and the energy to be successful. So,
Yes, yes, indeed. I love that. And the part that you talked, it's not just you. You've got a family. You shared that in the beginning. You have a family, and so the choices you make impacts everybody. And there's this ripple effect, and so it's really important to have that transparency with the people in your life. And I don't think a lot of people think about that. How I'm going to make a decision, and they don't really think about how did that decision impact others, or how will it in a month or two, right?
yeah, let's take that one a step further. So, in a transition like this, especially for someone that's a ball buster like myself, I'm going to go to the highest levels. I want to make the most money. I want to get the most. I'm always the one that's going to reach for the stars and I want to go as high as I can. And of course, that's what I did. And off the bat, I ended up reaching out to one of the most prestigious realtors in the area. And I was like, I want to learn from an amazing mentor.
Hmm.
So I come back and I talked to my husband after this. And of course, we had a great conversation. She essentially invited me onto her team and we talked about the structure. And I had interviewed 4 brokers already. So I was going through the process of interviewing brokers. And for those of you that don't know, like when you become a real estate agent, you're not going to interview for a position. Polly said you are building a business. So you need to make a decision on where you want to work based on what you want to create, who you want to be represented by, how you want to represent yourself, etc. So to that point, when we were talking about how does this affect my family, I could take multiple roads. So I've met with many realtors at this point and looking at all of them and how they're interacting in their business. And I've decided to take a very intentional route as I move forward. And how I would normally go balls to the walls and say, I'm going to make as much money as possible and I want to be very successful. Of course, I want to be successful. And I have a 2-year-old. She will only be 2 once.
That's
And
right.
so, in order for me to be present in her world and be there when she goes to bed and or be able to take her to see Santa Claus on the weekend. I have to be really mindful about the approach that I take in this new business. Now, if I'm working on the weekends and at night, is that going to allow me to have the life that I want from a family perspective? So it is bigger than me. It's way bigger than me. And I think my husband actually said to me, listen, I know you always want to be the best in the business. Like whatever you're doing, you want to be the best. But I don't need you to be the best. I need you to be my wife and her mother.
Nice.
And we're fine. We don't need to have all the money in the world. But if you're not here, then what? And I was just, it like made me want to cry. I'm not kidding, because it gave me permission to be a mom. It gave me permission to balance. It gave me permission to not have to prove myself in a way that I've always done. And it was so refreshing. I cannot even tell you. And not saying everyone will have this opportunity, but being intentional when you're making a transition about the life that you want to create for yourself and those around you, and taking that moment, that power and the pause moment to reflect and to think about, I can manifest and create whatever I want. So why don't we take a minute, take a step back, think about it, and be very mindful of how we move forward.
Get clear on the intention, make it happen. Yeah, I love that. And what you just shared, what popped into my head was, so all these years working really hard to try to get noticed, to try to do all the things, to try to make the people in leadership positions, which, to be honest, are usually male, and especially where you were working. And now you had a man in your life who completely supports you no longer having to be super mom or superwoman, right? Wonder Woman, whatever. And you actually have granted yourself permission. He said the words, but you had to feel them and bring them to life. And I think that sometimes when people can be told something, but if they don't bring it into their being and allow it to unfold, what does this really mean for me?
Yeah.
It could be missed.
Yeah. And I want to be very clear, because my podcast is called The Invitation. It's for women that need to understand that they deserve a seat at the table with men, right? We deserve to be treated as equals, and we are equal. So I want to be clear that me making that decision does not take away from what women can achieve and should and deserve, and the type of money that we all deserve to make and bring into our world. We can do whatever we want to do. I think that it is just very reaffirming that I get to make that choice, and I get to live the way I want to live. I get to build my business in the way that I want to build it. I get to be very intentional about the life that I want to create. And that in itself is exciting. That in itself is, what's the word I'm looking for? That requires vulnerability in itself to make that kind of a decision.
Indeed.
And to look at it like you're not taking a step back, you're actually taking a more aligned step forward.
And I think that's important because, again, when people lose their job or when a transition is happening, oftentimes we have this idea in our heads that I have to do this next thing because that's what's expected. That's social norms or whatever. And you don't. I think it's more important to align with what makes your heart sing, what makes you just light up and feel fulfilled, because people know if you love what you're doing versus if you're just going through the motions to get more money or to whatever, right? So yeah, very cool.
We started talking about this before we jumped on. I have always been doing what I thought I should be doing, right? I was just shooting myself over and over again. And the reality is that there is no one that I have to prove myself to. I don't need to do the shoulds anymore. I get to take this to the next level of whatever I see fit. And Of course, it's going to be successful because that's what I want to do. And I think when you love what you're creating, there's energy behind that. People can feel that. They resonate with that. They want to be a part of it. It's what creates that magnetic connection. So it's good. It's going to happen. It's going to be successful. And I'm really excited for it. I think what I'm probably going to have to do is monitor myself on the gas pedal, right?
Yeah.
And be really mindful of where I'm putting my time and energy, and boundaries, setting boundaries to support what it is that I want to create.
Yeah. So purposeful action and boundaries.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Definitely. Have you thought about your boundaries yet?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
how did you go about deciding your boundaries? Because I know that has come. I had a speaking engagement over the weekend, and some of the folks in the event were talking about how difficult knowing how to set boundaries are. So how did you go about setting yours?
Let's just say, Polly, that I had to do a little bit of therapy to get there. This happened years ago. And as I mentioned, there's power in the pause. And I also truly believe that it's okay to say no. It's okay to say no because that creates more energy for the yeses. It's saying no to the people that might not be the right fit clients. It's saying no to, if there's something important in my work that's amazing, I might have to say no to one or two evenings. And that's okay. But that doesn't mean I say no to all, right? Or that might be I say no and pass off a showing or an open house to somebody else so that I can be with my family because we've already had plans. Another way that I just said no is identifying what are my values? What do I carry with me? I know that my husband and I, we love to travel. We just do. Now we're in this pause moment. My daughter just turned 2. And as everyone knows, when kids turn 2, that requires another plane ticket. And that's fine, but they are also all over the place at 2 years old. It's okay that we're not traveling as much right now, but that's not something that I'm willing to give up in the future. So it's identifying what are these pockets of time that really recharge and refuel us to live and work every single day. You have to have those recharge moments, and we love venturing off and doing new things and seeing new places, and so that's just not something I'm going to give up. And what became very clear in some conversations that I have is that some people in that industry don't have boundaries. They don't take vacations. And so it's being very mindful of how I'm going to move forward in my work and what that's going to look like.
Good. I'm so proud of you. That's just wonderful. Very
Thank
cool.
you. I appreciate it.
So you mentioned your podcast is The Invitation.
Hmm.
So talk a little bit about what's your podcast, like what was the purpose, the intent? Who is your ideal listener?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. So the invitation, I was trying to figure out what name would resonate. I had thought about this for a while, and really it's for women,
Mhm.
and it's for women in business as well as women entrepreneurs. And what I had seen over and over again in my business was that women just want to feel seen. They want to feel heard. They want to have a seat at the table. They deserve a seat at the freaking table. That's all I got to say about that.
Yes.
And I also see the opportunity to step further into understanding what is your sole purpose when it comes to bridging the gap between energetic and emotional intelligence and this very masculine way of working and living that we have been conditioned to believe is how we're supposed to live and act and work, of this strategic lens, right? So if anyone is in the workplace or you own your own business, it's this idea of doing, never enough. You set a goal, you achieve it, you automatically are jumping to the next thing. So it's taking both the energetic intelligence and the emotional intelligence of really the feminine and bringing it together with the strategic so that you have a balanced way of being, and
Nice.
ultimately bringing women together to understand, how do I build my business in a way that's intuitive?
Mhm.
How do I grow myself and give myself the opportunities to put myself out there, whether it's building confidence, gaining visibility, identifying different ways to be seen, to be heard, to build community. So that's what the invitation's all about. And it's really a space where people can come if they are looking to align on what's next for them,
Yeah.
and getting clear and getting the tools and strategies of how to move forward.
Nice. Now you're going to continue with the podcast?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Very cool.
I love it. I realized that YouTube is not necessarily my favorite thing. I think sometimes when I'm looking at a script and I'm recording, it just doesn't feel as authentic.
Mhm.
But when I'm just recording on audio, it felt so good. And I just thought to myself, this is the missing piece. So I'm going to keep the podcast. I
Nice.
batch record, so it'll be just fine. And at the same point in time, I record little audio notes when I have moments of inspiration. So those pieces go into my little private podcast. So that's a lot of fun. And I just think sometimes those are things that have to be captured and shared. Otherwise they're just sitting there, right?
That's right. That's right. And a few months ago, I was talking with someone that I coach, and he got on a call and he was just so excited, just beside himself. And I said, "What is going on?" And he said, "I was just listening to this amazing podcast. The podcast came out 10 years ago. The person only did 8 shows. And yet here we were. This person found this podcast that had one sentence that changed my friend's life."
That gave me goosebumps.
It's just, and so that's why I was like, doesn't matter if you keep going with the podcast or not, because I guarantee there are nuggets that are changing people's lives. And so I'm happy to hear that you are moving forward with it and going to continue. Very cool.
I appreciate
Awesome.
that. Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And I love podcasting too, obviously. Something a lot of people don't know is back in 2005, 2005, I actually was podcasting.
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
Early adopter. I
Yeah.
love it.
And so my neighbor was a radio host, and we partnered on 4 podcasts. And that was, I built the website, and I had to write RSS code and all the things. And so it was just, it's interesting I was looking at your website also, and we've got a lot of similarities, which was really fun to see. I knew it when I met you, but it's just fun to see in black and white. It's just really cool. And Duluth is only 2.5 hours north of Minneapolis, or from where I live, I should say, in the cities. And it's one of our favorite places in the world. And because it's so close, and I don't do the heat, and there's a reason I live in Minnesota. In the summer, we'll look at, oh my gosh, it's getting hot. Oh, look at that. And we will literally go to Duluth or go to Grand Marais because it's 10 degrees cooler up there, even in the summer. So love it up there. And that Great Lake it's like a salt-free ocean. It's crazy.
Oh, it absolutely is. And Park Point, it's like the sand dunes on the Jersey shore. Like, it's absolutely gorgeous. You would have no idea because you can't see anything on the other side.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the landscape is gorgeous. You're welcome up here anytime. You let me know.
Thank you. I will let you know when I'm coming. Very cool. All right. So if you were to just recap, what are the top 3 to 5 items that we've talked about today, or that we didn't talk about, that people need to just consider as they're going on their journey?
Yeah. Yeah. Just remember that we are all in transformation. Life is not linear, right? If you're an entrepreneur or you're building a book of business or whatever you're doing, it's not linear. You're going to have ups and downs. And so make sure that you have a support system around you. And just remember that if something happens and it feels as though it's a negative, right? That line of your rejection is your redirection. It's really finding the silver lining because you're meant for more. You're meant to do something more. That's why this is happening. You're meant to learn from it. So what is the learning? And in that same context, energy is everything. So how are you going to do with what you've been given? How are you going to act, right? We can choose to wake up on the right side of the bed or the wrong side of the bed. And it's this idea that energy is transferable. So it's really important to identify, what am I going to do with this? If it's important for you not to have your family see you in this state of disarray, be mindful of your energy. And what are you doing to support changing that, right? Stepping into your highest good, stepping into the next level of where you want to go. That's going to require you to do it not out of ego. That's going to require you to do it out of service. And so I would say first thing is your rejection is your redirection. Second is your energy. Let's see here. Third would probably be when you're looking at that next step, you'd have to be self-aware, even more self-aware than you ever have been, to notice the signs and to really seek joy, because we only live this life once. You only get one opportunity and you never know when it's going to be your last. So live your life full of joy. Choose the option that isn't necessarily going to make you the most money, but it's going to give you the most fulfillment. And really, ultimately, as you're moving forward, do it with integrity. Do it with your values. Get clear on what it is that you want to create in your life. Stand by what you believe in and build your life around what's most meaningful to you.
Yes. All right. So I think that the show after this one is going to have to be on values, because a lot of people don't even know what they stand for.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
That's a great call out.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with values, they come from within, right? And truly, a lot of us, I had mentioned conditioning before, we've been conditioned to believe we have to do things a certain way, though that idea of shoulds.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to us to rewrite the script. It's up to us to identify what's meaningful to us versus what do we think we have to do? What should we do? It's more, let's come back to what's important. And really, that's where values really play a big role in our decision making.
So episode 21, stop shooting on yourself.
Yeah.
So if folks want to learn more about what Christine's talking about, episode 21 is all about how it's our life. And no one has that right to impose upon us what we should be doing. We make choices to go in a direction, but then you can't blame someone else. And so stop shooting on yourself is exactly, yeah. So I love that. Very good. Awesome. All right. My last question for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you were, so we're going to just use Jensen as an example. So as she starts to grow up, what are the one thing that you wish someone had told you to help you on your journey when you were a kid that you would love to impart on your daughter?
You're inherently worthy. You're inherently worthy. You can do whatever you want. No one can tell you what you can and cannot do. You are worthy just by being here of doing that thing.
Yeah.
That's what I want her to know. I don't want her to walk through life wondering whether or not she deserves something. She absolutely deserves it. You might have to work for it, but you absolutely deserve it. And no one is more or less capable than you. If you want something, you go after it, you deserve it.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things my dad always told me as a kid was, you can do, be, and have anything you want. You just need to want it for yourself. And it's not about selfishness. It's about what fills you up, what lights you up. And that goes with what you've been saying. It aligns with that. How can I be in service to others? Because that's when people tend to have the most joy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's this idea of moving from a place of pleasure versus pressure.
Yes,
Right?
I love that.
Because when we move from pleasure, we move from a state of joy. When we move from pressure, we move from external forces. So are you going to move from within, or are you going to move from outside of yourself, from stress, ego, validation, right? That's not how we want to live. We want to live from a state of pleasure. And that'll be my fifth. I don't think I mentioned 5, but that's my number 5.
Love that. I love that. That is fantastic. Very good. Very good. Awesome. Christine, thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your wisdom. And listeners, I know that you've got we know of 5 nuggets, right? And lots of wisdom on how to transition and moving forward, going from that shoulds to really living into your passion. And I really encourage you to re-listen to this, because there's nuggets along the way that have woven a story. And now you'll hear it again and be able to catch it. And this is just a real noteworthy session. So thank you very much for sharing all of that wisdom. Really wonderful. Show notes will include all of the ways to get a hold of Christine and her latest adventure, and we'll watch that. But the invitation is the podcast, and I look forward to start listening to that right away. And I just encourage everybody to find your passion, align with your values, and start living from inside so that you can live into your best life every day and make every day count. Until next time, go ahead, like the show, give us a 5-star rating, share this with friends, because everybody can use these nuggets of wisdom, and enjoy the journey.
Thank you for listening to Polyskaya, your show host for Live Into Your Best Life. Check out the show notes and visit her at polyskaya.com to learn more and continue your journey. Until next week, enjoy the adventure.